We got to about 5 million, say in the mid 2010s. And then we got stuck there for a couple of years, had to do a bunch of stuff, grew it up to about we were in that kind of $10 million range for a few years. And then we did about 15, 20. Last year we were done, and we're going into this year to 30 to 35. I started this with a partner with zero revenue, right? So, and we bootstrapped it.
A wonderful valuation, probably in the 20 to 30 million range. But you're on the path to 4 years from now, if you hit your goals, be above 50 million, maybe rounding to 100 million.
Some days we keep on rolling.
All right, welcome back to Inspired or Acquired. We've got a good one today. This is a show where we interview business owners and have real conversations about how their business is doing. We give them a valuation and ask whether or not they would sell. So today we have Alan Pentz on. Alan, it's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you guys.
And we've got our co-host, as always, Clint Fiore. So, Alan, I'm going to have you share here, but Alan runs a really impressive and has built a really impressive government contracting and government consulting firm, Corner Alliance. So love to have you tell us a little bit more about this, and then Clint can jump in and give us a...
I explain this to people, and then they ask me, after I explain it, they're like, so what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm outside of DC, and I'm in the town industry, which is government consulting. Amongst, I do some investments on the side, but that's my main business. And, we do work with the government largely, like, if you've heard of Deloitte Consulting or Accenture or PwC, now Guidehouse, we're kind of similar to those firms. And so a lot of our work, like you would have heard of maybe the CHIPS Act that the government that was created to fund semiconductor reshoring and then all sorts of research and things like that around semiconductors. So like we help the government set up and run that program from the management side. There's tons of compliance and regulation and all these things that you've got to get through to actually get money out and perform. And the government, usually contracts portions of that out. So companies like mine do it. So that's us. Yeah, we're about, I guess we're on target to do about 30 to 35 million this year. Probably somewhere in that $5 to $6 million EBITDA range. That's usually pretty typical. And I can tell you more about the business and how, it's really like I was telling Clint earlier that this kind of business, it's so difficult for the government to contract. It takes a lot of effort and time. And there's a lot of chances for people to protest. And so it can take months to a year to several years for the government to contract for things. So they tend to push a lot of different kinds of work together. And then they tend to compete those contracts for 3 to 5 years because they really don't want to have to go through it again. And 5 years is usually the mandatory timeline to recompete the work. So, once you win a contract, obviously you have to perform, but it's kind of like an annuity once you get it. So it's project based, but it's got a 3 to 5 year lifetime on it as long as you're performing.
Are contracts rolling every year, or do you get like a wave of them every 3 to 5 years?
No, they're rolling, especially when you're growing, because, and there's a whole system to this about how they work, and it depends on the department, and then the departments use what basically would be a master services agreement, maybe in a private company. They call them contract vehicles in our... Mm-hmm. That's where they pre-certify a bunch of vendors to provide certain services, potentially at certain rates, right? And then only those vendors can actually bid on the work. It's a way to limit competition to higher quality candidates, so they don't have to go through 85,000 proposals. So those, it depends on really the cycle of that department when they're coming out. So especially when you're growing, you probably have things at different cycles, which is nice.
Yeah, well, I have so many questions. I don't do a lot of government contracting brokerage work, and it's always fascinated me. I want to start off with just like a look in the rear view mirror. So tell me, like, the last few years, what's your trend been as far as revenue and EBITDA in the past, say, 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take you all the way back, right? Like I
Yeah.
won't go through every year, but you know, I started this with a partner with zero revenue, right? So, and we bootstrapped it. And when I said it was like really, because we had worked in this industry, we had some client contacts and some clients had moved around, and that created an ability for us to move out of companies we were working at. And you know, it was really easy to get to 1 million because we knew I had you know, my partner had clients, I had clients, and those contacts was very quick. We could subcontract to people we knew and kind of get there. But it was really the process of getting to 2 million and beyond that got
Hmm.
us really stuck. Um, so I would say for several years, you know, the company is 16, 17 years old now, founded in '07. I'd say for the first 3, 4 years, we were just a couple of consultants who happened to employ ourselves.
Hmm.
And really what happens in this industry is you've got to get basically you've got to get experience to win. The way you get experience is you subcontract with another provider who has those master services agreements and contract vehicles. You do some work, you got to get at least a year under your belt. And then you got to talk someone into competing a contract out where you can prime it. And it's really tough. Or you got to be the right person in the right place. It's a very difficult thing to go from subcontract to prime contractor. But once you do that, you're on your way. And then once you've performed a few prime contracts, then you're eligible to start bidding for some of these master services agreements. And that's when your growth really takes off. So for the company, we got stuck, you know, sort of after that first kind of growth period. We kind of got some primes. We got to about 5 million, say in the mid 2010s. And then we got stuck there for a couple of years, had to do a bunch of stuff, grew it up to about we were in that kind of $10 million range for a few years.
Hmm.
And then we did about 15, 20. Last year we were done, and we're going into this year to 30 to 35. So it's been pretty quick over the last, say, 4 years, going from, you know, being stuck more at like that 10, 12 kind of range, and now up to like 30, 35.
Okay. And what's your cap table look like? Is it you and a partner, you said?
So I bought him out
Okay.
during one of those times when we got stuck at about
Okay.
5 to 7 million. So that's when that's when I got really serious about growing the company.
Yeah.
And that led to kind of some discussions about where we were going. So I ended up buying him out and paid off the balloon payment for that last year, the final balloon payment.
Hey, congrats. So you own
Yeah,
100%
so I'm
now.
100. So I've been 100% for a while, but
Yeah.
there was always this little piece still out there.
Yeah. Well, congrats. That's great.
It's an amazing run, and just it's cool
Yeah,
to hear how you push through those phases.
yeah. And there was a lot about my industry in that, but there was just a lot about how do you grow businesses past certain barriers. And a lot of it was like, hey, I'm partner and I'm not seeing eye to eye. Do I have the right leadership team in place? Do I have the right infrastructure in place to really grow the company? And it just took a long time to push through those barriers, which I talk a lot about and stuff I write and when I do
I
podcasts
appreciate
and
you
stuff.
being
So
on because I know you're a podcaster and you're really open and kind of an open book and how you
yeah, of
share. So I
course.
think it's going to be really insightful. Um, I've always said a lot of those layers, like that first million sprint is all about you, really. Like you can
Yeah,
be the rainmaker, and then you hit that ceiling often right around $1 million, where it's like I've got to get better at leading people,
yeah,
and then that can take you up into a couple million, and then you hit another ceiling. Sometimes that's in the 5 million range where you're like,
yep,
you run out of bandwidth on how much you can lead direct reports, and you have to have that breakthrough of I got to start leading leaders and not just leading people,
you got it,
and
100%.
that kind of levels you up. And so I feel like that could be its own whole conversation here
It
about just
sure, it
kind of,
sure is, and it's why only what is it like 0.4% of companies ever get
Mhm.
past 5 million or some
Yeah,
crazy stat like that, right?
yeah, it's a very small amount. So congratulations on breaking through because
Thank you.
that means you had a few major level ups
Oh
along,
yeah,
along the
big
lines
time.
there.
I got the battle scars to show it.
Yeah. So
Hey guys, wanted to take a quick break from the show just to tell you about our companies for a second. I'm Patrick Dichter and I own Apple Tree Business Services. We do quality accounting and tax nationwide. So if you're running a business or looking to buy a business, we'd love to help you out with accounting and tax services. You can find us at appletreebusiness.com. And Clint, tell us about Bison Business.
Yeah, Bison Business is my firm. We do nationwide M&A, so we help people buy and sell companies. Most of our customers have companies in the 1 to 20 million revenue range, profitable businesses. So if you've got one and you're ready to get acquired, you can reach out to us at bisonbusiness.com for a complimentary evaluation. We can get you to market and get you sold. If you're a listener that's a buyer that wants to buy a company that size, make sure you're on our email list, because we'll send you out deals first before they hit the market anywhere else. But we'd love to serve you anytime you're thinking of acquiring or selling your business. We want to be your first stop at Bison Business.
Awesome. Now back to the show.
Alan, how old are you today?
I am 51. That's the one thing I didn't want to answer.
Okay. How much do you weigh? No,
exactly. Yeah, that one I'm not coming up with.
All right. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. It just helps to give context. So you're 51. You own 100% of this company. You've leveled up a few times here. This isn't my forte on valuing government contracting, so I'm going to lean on you a little bit here. But in some of our pre-show conversation and just the cursory research, I'm thinking this is a transferable company, but because the project-based nature, even though it has a tail to it, like you don't get these blockbuster multiples here, but you might be in the 5x-ish range. Is that kind of reasonable for where you're at? So
I think that's about right. I think there's some unique dynamics, right?
Yeah.
Like, so as I mentioned, there are these set aside programs in the government, and they range from, work set aside for service disabled veterans to women owned to minority owned or disadvantaged, called 8A program. And then there's just general small. And the general small is what we are, and that's the largest, that's the most revenue or most work is competed just small rather than those other designations. And I think what you'll find is, if you're one of those other designations and your work has been competed under it, it can be your valuation can really plummet. It's a great business to operate, but it's very difficult to sell because you have to have, you almost always have to have another person with that designation. Or else you're going to lose the work. I mean, it does depend a bit, and people do stuff, but in general, that's the way it works. So you got that kind of set, and then you got your general small business. And I would say the thing that small business does is limit your buyer pool. So you can't get a strategic usually. There are exceptions I'll talk about. So you're really looking at a financial buyer. It's great for searchers. It's good for individuals taking on debt and, doing an SBA loan. But of course that limits the size of the company that you can buy, right? So, I was probably in a much better place to get multiple bids, 5-6 years ago when I was smaller. Now that I'm running up on 5-6 million in EBITDA, there are just not a ton of financial buyers out there. So what I tend to see in my business is you could sell at that $2 million EBITDA kind of level, and you're going to get 8 to 10. And then if you can get yourself really big, maybe 5+ million in EBITDA, looking at revenue 50 million plus, probably, like even getting up to 10 million in EBITDA. Then you'll see like PE firms come in and they'll buy small. I mean, it's tough for them. They'll probably buy a few of them and put them together and try to, once you lose, so you can get some PE as a minority partner and not lose your small business size status, but normally you're losing it. And so they basically have a melting ice cube on their hands. And there's a certain amount of work they can recompete. You can move to being a sub, put another small business in front of you. You can talk some clients into recompeting it as what we call unrestricted or no small business size designation. And there's various ability to do that. So they're basically going to come in and buy you, discount your valuation, and then have you roll equity and try to put a bunch of these together, get enough of it recompeted so that it's large, and then kind of sell it up the chain to a strategic. So really, I'm coming out of sort of a dead man, like kind of no-go zone, where it's too big for that searcher individual with an SBA loan, and still a little bit too small for PE.
Yeah.
So what our real goal is like, hey, let's grow large enough so that we become attractive to that
Yeah.
next stage of financial buyer.
Gotcha.
So you're not ready to sell, huh?
Well, I don't think it makes sense. I mean, this is a great cash flowing business, right? Like I said, you get contracts as long as you perform. You got 3 to 5 year annuities. And the recompete win rate it's gone down. It used to be like 90%. Now it's like probably 80, 85%.
Mhm.
Depends a little bit on the size and where you are. So, I mean, you got a good chance of winning that work again.
It sounds
Um,
it sounds like you're enjoying the lifestyle a little bit. You know, like you just
yep,
got back from Italy, right? Like,
that's
and
right. That's right. Well,
how'd
let's
that
not talk
go?
to, don't talk too much about it. I can't seem to be too
Yeah.
good, right?
I mean,
Um, but yeah, no, it is a great, there are a lot of people that run it. So the way they calculate, whether your size status is on a 5 year revenue average. You take
mhm.
all your last 5 years, add it together, divide by five. And if you're over a mark, you're no longer small. If you're under, you're small. And, a lot of people will just run it like right under that mark.
Yeah.
And, you just, it's a great cash flowing business and you're making good money, but you're just never, when you're around that size, you're just not going to make it as an acquisition opportunity.
Yeah.
So I'm really committed to growing it and getting
Mhm.
into that next level.
Mhm.
That means getting above 50 million. And our goal is 80 million in the next 4 years.
Okay.
So we're on the warpath.
What type of margin do you think you'll have at 80 million as far as EBITDA margin goes?
Yeah. I think margins start shrinking, right?
Yeah.
So like many industries. So I think, when you're probably in the below 20 million, you can push margins in this space up to 20%.
Mhm.
That's about the limit. I mean, there are very few that can get over that. As you start getting closer to say 50, I think it's going down to 15. And as you get to 80, you're probably in the 12 to 15.
So
Um,
you,
yeah.
you're right where we want to go. This normally we'll model some of this live in Excel, Alan.
Yep.
Or this year you're on pace for 30, right?
30 to 35.
30
Yeah.
to 35.
Depending on the,
Okay, at a 15% net profit. So
yeah.
your
So
goal
that's a
is to
good
get up
estimate.
to 80% top line in the next 5 years.
80 million. Yeah.
So if we just forecast out like a
Yeah, because when you think about it, because we'll win. The weird thing in our market is the government fiscal year ends in September 30th, so a
mm,
lot of work gets awarded right around then. So we'll actually be going into next year on like a 40 to 45 million dollar run rate,
I see.
Yeah.
right? So but we'll only get that revenue in like November and December, that additional revenue.
Got
So
it.
yeah, we're already
Huh?
projecting for 26. We'll be at like before we win anything, we'll be at 45. Say,
Okay.
right?
And then
Um,
you think your 15% bottom line will hold, or you think you said it?
I think it'll probably hold for a year or two.
Let's take it to like 10
And
or 12 when we go out.
yeah, but it's going to get down to 12 by the time we get up to that top.
Okay.
The other thing you'll find is that the gross margin's going down.
Mhm.
So you have me at 60. That's what we were like at 10, 15 million. But as you really get these big contracts and really grow that fast,
Yeah.
you're usually doing it because a large business's work
Mhm.
has been competed small, has been moved small. So they're coming in as a sub, so they're going to take 49% of everything. So
Okay.
you start moving down toward the 50 gross
Yeah.
margin because you're just passing so much to subs.
Okay. So this percentage here, if you're following online, is actually just the cost of goods. So, but you're saying as you grow, you're closer to like a 50%
Yeah.
gross margin, and then maybe 12% bottom line. So if we look at the year 2028, we're somewhere around like 75, 80 million top line, and then hopefully 8 to 9 million, maybe 10 million of EBITDA falling on the bottom line.
Right. Yeah. The goal would be to be at about 10. I
10.
mean, and if you're getting ready for a sale, you're obviously, doing some stuff. Because, like, you do need to make and we're in the middle of this discussion right now, is like, there are major investments that you need to make if you're going to go be a prime unrestricted contractor.
Okay.
and those are in the million, lots of experienced people. And so like maybe you can bounce yourself back up to 15% by knowing you're going to sell and not making that investment.
Yep.
That's probably what we would try to do if we're going to take that route.
Yeah. And so right now we're saying it could be worth maybe 22 million at a 5x.
Yeah. So I'm saying, like, let's do rough ballparks there, Patrick. Like, let's say if he decided to sell end of the year, I'm thinking somewhere in the 20 to 30 million, probably 25 to 30.
Yeah, and there's actually, so the other thing is we're getting more of these contract vehicles. So there's a couple right now. There's one that we're currently on that's recompeting. We'll get that, and then there's one that is more IT professional services focused called CIO SP4. Awesome acronyms, and that's a huge government wide one. So if we got that, that could push our valuation to 6 times because we have really attractive vehicles, just depending on the buyer. So yeah, I think we could. If we were going for a sale, we could probably get to 30. Maybe.
So I guess I'm trying to get to some deeper level. So we talk about the numbers to get to life, and I want to get into like what makes you tick here, and and can you tell me a little about what's your family situation right now?
Yeah, so I'm married, have 3 kids, live out in the burbs in Maryland. And so my oldest is in college, and I got 2 one graduated from middle school yesterday. But so I'll have 2 in high school next year.
Okay. So I see, a lot of people make big changes when they move to empty nesters. And so it sounds like you're within 4 years of that?
Yeah, that's certainly potential, and that's something I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the timeline that we're going to have to make a major decision.
That's interesting.
On the company.
Yeah. So like I've done, so you're 51, you might become an empty nester at 55.
Yep.
And I've done a lot of deals for people that are 50s that are just getting that empty nest mode, because it feels like there's this inflection point in your life right then where you look at yourself in the mirror and you go, if I'm ever going to do anything else, and pivot, now's the time, because I'm still, I got the kids to college and I've still got energy and skills and connections, and I could totally do anything I want at this point. I'm not as tethered. And so sometimes that's a great time to sell a business. So for those listening that are buyers, you don't always need a 70-year-old, seller to feel like they've got a good motivation to sell. Sometimes that pivot at the empty nester mode is a great time where people are open-minded about reinventing themselves, because sometimes you don't want to do this forever. You don't want to. Yeah. And so when you think about your business here, I would be tempted. I think a lot of us would be tempted even now, at 25, 30 million valuation, you own 100%, you just paid off your debt. Like that. That's getting in the set for life territory, I think, for almost anybody that's, and I know you're an investor and you've got other, you got other things you enjoy and other things you do.
I could roll it all into metal fabs and affordable housing, right?
Yeah. Sure. So, what's keeping you, like, what's the difference? Like, what's the difference between 25, 30 million today or 70 to 100 million in 4 or 5 years? Is that something that's significant to you? Because
I'd be honest and say, that's a different level.
Yeah.
What it would do for me personally is like not a tremendous amount. It would, like, I could have a bigger house in Telluride. I could live in Telluride.
Yeah.
So like that would be like, basically Patrick and I were talking about prices in Telluride, and like, I think you need 50 to 70 million to live in Telluride now. So that could be a possibility. But I wouldn't do a ton of extra stuff to get there. The other thing is, like, the cash flow on the way is really good. So like, even by the time I get to that point, the bank account will be very healthy. But I think and then I think, like, as we talked about the stages, right? I've worked really hard to grow my leadership team. And so just last week we announced that a woman who was running kind of operations or delivery to clients was promoted to president. And I've got a really solid team beyond that. We're growing it over the next year. And, to be honest, like, this is not like a business that I'm like grinding on. I've got a lot of freedom already. Doing that Italy trip and stuff and working on my golf game, which is terrible. So, I'm in a pretty good position right now.
Yeah.
And selling, while it would put extra money in the bank account, I actually think I'll make that amount of money on the way to the ultimate sale.
Yeah.
And I don't think my lifestyle is really crimped by that much. So then I think, all right, well, why take any risk? Why do it? Why not just sell right now? And, I think that I've been in this industry for a long time, and I kind of want to take that little run, and I want right now, just in the last couple of years, we've really picked up steam. People are talking about the company. We're known. We've now developed partnerships that are starting to really yield multiple opportunities, not just one. And so you get a head of steam, and I kind of want to play that head of steam to the next level. And actually something you said, Clint, really, talking about the 55-year-old versus 75. I do think it's at inflection points, and different industries have different inflection points, but they tend to coalesce around certain revenue milestones. And, there are a lot of people like me, like I could go for it, and I could go do the PE. I could go get the PE, become a platform, or I have friends that have invested their cash flow as they get near that exiting their size standard, and they start buying companies that are smaller. And they're going for a strategic exit at 120 million, right? And that's certainly something I could do. But it's just like, man, the level of investment, like I was talking about, and work to do that is insane. That means grinding.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like, hey, I can push it to this level where we can have an awesome exit and like play the game that was set out by the government for us to play. And I feel like I played it and, pass go. And at that point, I think it's good for me. But taking that next step, oof, man, that is just, that's for a different person than me. And so somebody else, we'll bring in a partner to do that.
Yeah. I know you're passionate about business in general, and you have a podcast, you do the small business mentor stuff and invest in stuff. And so I know you got this business brain that goes a bunch of directions. But I mean, I just think about your decision-making process here, and I just think about you've got the kids committed in schools, getting into high school now. You've got a business that's on a ramp. You just kind of hold on one second.
I got a dog too, so don't worry about it.
I have a kid walk in and just set off my dog. Hold on. I was getting into a good moment there. I don't want to mess it up.
I know you were.
Right on the set, people.
I love it.
I'll go back to what I was saying there. So yeah, you've got this inflection point coming, but for now, like if you were to sell right now, I know you're going to keep doing business stuff. And pretty much no matter how good of an investor you are, you're not going to be able to match the returns of what your company is going to be able to do internally, with sticking with the program and getting to that next level up. And so it's like, it kind of becomes why, right? Like why make the move when you don't want to disrupt the family? You don't want to pull the kids out of school and their friends. And, is all that factoring into this conversation?
So, yeah. So, I mean, there are two factors, I kind of look at. First is financial. And so, like, I kind of feel like I can make the money that I would get in the sale over the next few years and then still have the company to sell. And the level of exit at that point would be a lot higher. So, like, financially, if they were just isolated to that, it really makes no sense financially to sell right now. Plus my buyer pool's smaller now as I'm in between those two kind of buyers. And then the second piece is just personally, like I think a lot of business owners don't, they sell their company, then they don't know what to do. It's common, they go through depression and they go through this cycle. And I'm kind of getting to that now. Like I'm working on what is it I'm going to do next right now. I've invested in, affordable housing company. I'm helping these guys roll up a couple of metal fab facilities up in Massachusetts. I'm doing my podcast and newsletter, building that audience. And like that'll be all set from when I sell. So I guess as long as I can do that and the financial piece doesn't make sense, like why, I don't understand why I would sell.
That's wise of you to look ahead and just realize I've seen that too. People that sell and they get bored or they're lost. So you remind me of like a, NFL wide receiver who's still playing really good ball and making good money and like starting to work on their next career while they're in the league rather than like try to figure it out once they're out. So,
I know those fools that give them the last contract though,
yeah.
and they ride that out. So we'll see. Yeah, but it's fun. And also like, I'm going to be interested in, I think there is an interest I have too in navigating the options of what the business does when we exit or what we do. There's going to be something. Either we're going to have to either we're going to have to take our capital and go buy a bunch of stuff or bring in a financial partner like PE or do some mergers. Something like that has to happen.
Yeah.
So it's going to be really interesting to like go through the options as we get to it. And I think that's intellectually interesting as long as a risk isn't crazy for me.
Without getting too political here, you're in government contracting. We're in an election year. Does the election timing, because that kind of coincides, you got this year and then you've got another 4 years from now when you're thinking about that might be the timing on your exit, another election in 2028. Do election outcomes make a big difference in your prospects for the GovCon work that you're bidding on?
Yeah, it's interesting. It never has up until recently. So I've been through multiple election cycles at this point. But there are a couple pieces of work we have that were, because we've gotten into some of the newer kind of infrastructure-y work and that kind of stuff. There are some things that are potential. And it's a risk that we have to manage. But to be honest, most of the time we're working on, getting semiconductor manufacturing back to. Are you guys still there?
Yeah, you're good.
Cool. Yeah, most of the time we're working on things like getting semiconductor manufacturing, reshored to the United States or getting broadband to all American citizens. Those tend to be relatively bipartisan, and most stuff's kind of baked in the cake. So call us the deep state or whatever, I don't know, but we just keep operating, and usually the next administration is pretty amenable to those kind of things too. So I think there's risk, but I don't think it's massive.
I'm bullish on the United States government spending lots of money long term.
Yeah, it should be. It should be. I don't think that's stopping for anytime soon. So I think you're correct to be bullish. And I just get a little piece of it, Clint. So you can feel good about that.
Yeah, it's good to know it's going to a good cause. Well, man, I think this is a neat thing. I like to kind of sum up and reflect back kind of what I'm hearing from you, and seeing if I can get the audience to kind of understand your thought process. So we kind of walk through your initial valuation. We're saying you're probably in that no man's land, above searcher range, above SBA range, but not quite into the private equity sweet spot yet, but still a wonderful valuation, probably in the 20 to 30 million range. But you're on the path to 4 years from now, if you hit your goals, be above 50 million, maybe rounding to 100 million, like somewhere multiple times higher, and you'll have made great money along the way. So you're weighing, why would I not do that when I'm having a pretty good lifestyle? I've got a good team in place. I just promoted a woman that's doing an awesome job to president, and I've got kids that just entered high school, so it doesn't seem like the timing is great financially nor personally, but you're building your escape raft, for when the timing is right. You're not going to be left in this tailspin, not knowing who you are anymore or what to do, and you're you're making other investments. And so I would say you are inspired for the moment when we talk about inspired versus acquired, but you're also are already kind of dipping your toe into the exit planning waters, because acquired is just going to help you, maybe in 4 years from now, maybe 5 or 6 years from now, turn a new chapter and get into, full on into these passion plays that you're into now on the podcast and the mentorship and investing that you're a part of. Is that kind of a fair summation?
That's
of
a
your
great summary. I got to write that down and use that when I go to parties. Yeah, I definitely am inspired on the path to acquired. Right?
Yeah.
There you go.
So that's the hope.
Awesome. Well, that's really insightful. I want to give you a chance, because I know there's a lot more to you than the government contracting business, and I've been on your podcast. Tell us about like just a little bit about like your newsletter, your podcast, and like what else you're developing here.
Yeah, thanks. So I have both a newsletter and podcast called The Small Business Mentor. You can check it out at smallbusinessmentor.co. And yeah, what I'm doing there is a little bit like you guys, interviewing business owners I've met and kind of getting a feel for their industries. And I like doing kind of like a little breakdown on the industry, but also really understanding, what are the key pivot points for them? Like I'm kind of going through, like understanding what that is for them and how they're approaching problem solving or getting through that kind of point. I think that's fascinating. I do that, and then, so I kind of do that in the newsletter too, but then also I've just been trying to build up through the newsletter, like a repository of all the key things that I had to learn along the way. Like we talked about those getting stuck at 1 million, 5 million, 10 million, hopefully I won't be stuck at 30 million, but there's another level there somewhere, probably in $50 to $80 million range. And so like, I'm really trying to create like a set of learnings that I've gone through to help other people like punch through that. And that's what I think, I'll be working on next, is taking that small business mentor into some kind of like education or something like that. I haven't figured out quite what yet, but I do think that there's just so many great concepts out there that I've learned going to entrepreneurs organization events and YPO, but that's never been brought together. So like, here's like the set of learnings that you can kind of go through to figure out how to rise up this small business growth ladder. So that's my personal mission.
Awesome. And I love your podcast and following you on Twitter. Your handle is Pentz, Pentz.
Super interesting, right?
Yeah. Exactly. So is that the best way for folks to find you or connect with you?
Yeah. Pentz, or come to the Small Business Mentor. Just shoot me an email through that. You can sign up for the newsletter. But yeah, Twitter's usually the easiest, or LinkedIn. Alan Pentz. So.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for coming on. This was inspiring for me as well, and just to hear you break through those levels. So we'll be sure to link to your profiles and your Small Business Mentor in the show notes. And excited to see you climb towards that $80 million top line goal that you're talking about. So,
all right,
coming on. We'll talk to you soon.
I'm excited to hear the first person who sells on this show. Like, there's just someone, you should have a call in.
We should have a call in.
Just auction off businesses. I would love that. I would be calling in.
We have an offer online too.
Let's go. I'm waiting for that one. So.
Yeah. All right. You might be on. So
cool, guys.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. See you guys.
Thanks, Alan.